Conservative leader Stephen Harper is taking some historical heat from the provinces.
If Stephen Harper had been the Prime Minister instead of Sir John A. Macdonald, and BC had said, well, we need a railway, he would have said, well, you know, we're not going to help you with that, build it yourself, and then would have stood in the way of getting it built.
Ontario's Kathleen Wynne isn't the only premier at odds with Harper. Last week, Alberta's Rachel Notley said it was unusual for him to pick fights during an election campaign after he called her NDP government a disaster. Joining us now from Montreal to talk about the growing role of provincial politics in this federal election is Antonia Maioni. She is a professor of political science with McGill University in Montreal. Good morning.
Morning, Beverly.
So some interesting, tones kind of being struck here. And let me begin with Kathleen Wynne. We just saw her at that campaign stop actively campaigning for the Liberals. But then, weighing in on the comment with the railway, yes, but also on the Canada Pension Plan, things that she's already been told no about. It does seem rather unusual that there would be these headlines, between the provinces and the federal government, or at least in this case, obviously, Stephen Harper.
Yes, that's true. Usually in a federal election campaign, we have the provinces, or the premiers at least, staying out of the fray, not getting involved. But that's certainly not the case for Ms. Wynne. She is actively campaigning on behalf of Justin Trudeau. Her party is actively campaigning, getting out the vote, sharing voter lists, etc. What's interesting is, though, it may be payback time, because if you recall, in the Ontario provincial election, Mr. Harper, and in particular many of his cabinet ministers, made no bones about wading into that election campaign, supporting candidates. So maybe this is part of that pretty bitter fight between the two of them.
Well, let me ask you about the NDP government and Rachel Notley. I mean, Stephen Harper called her government a disaster, and it's still pretty early. What does he have to gain from this?
Well, I think Mr. Harper was very nervous about what happened in Alberta with Ms. Notley becoming the head of the first NDP government there. But again, it's quite rare for federal politicians to attack provincial leaders in this way in the middle of an election campaign. And frankly, we don't know if Ms. Notley's government is a disaster or not. It's pretty early days. But I thought she came out and sort of defended herself very well. It brings up a larger question, though, about the extent to which the NDP, the federal NDP, is now running a national campaign. It's a front runner in a national campaign. So these kinds of issues are going to come up. Issues that are localized, that matter a lot to specific electorates on the ground in the provinces.
Yeah, and once, and again, with Alberta, we have NDP candidate Linda McQuaig weighing in, saying a lot of the oil sands oil is going to have to stay in the ground. When we're bringing this up, how could this play in the campaign?
Well, Linda McQuaig is well known for being quite a straight shooter, I guess,
yeah,
and quite ferocious in her attacks. So there are quite a few NDP candidates like this in the race this time. We can expect probably more of this, but I think that the NDP is going to have to do a better job of keeping a bit of a lid on candidates so that they have a message that can speak across the country. And so to be sensitive to that, it's one thing that they're also going to have to come to grips with in Quebec as well.
Well, let me ask you about Quebec, because now we're seeing kind of the joining in terms of a campaign anyway between Gilles Duceppe and Pierre Karl Péladeau of the PQ.
Well, the BQ and the Bloc Québécois and the Parti Québécois have always had quite an interesting relationship. They have, when the BQ was still a factor in federal politics, always relied on the PQ for getting out the vote, for helping them to organize during the federal election campaigns. But right now, they're so under the weather in terms of their financing and organization. It's not quite clear whether the Parti Québécois can help them all that much, though Pierre Karl Péladeau is campaigning quite heavily with Gilles Duceppe in the regions. So they are targeting votes, they are targeting areas and regional specifics in order to try to get out the vote for the Bloc Québécois.
Antonia Maioni, thank you for your time once again this Monday morning.
All right, thank you, Beverly.